Ashton Hurn is South Australia's Shadow Health Minister. She joins us here on Flow FM across regional South Australia. Ashton, help us unpack what's going on in Adelaide's hospitals and why it matters to regional South Australians.
Well, good morning, Ricky. And look, it's been a really concerning couple of weeks for the health system in South Australia, and it's not just something that's isolated to Metro Adelaide. I mean, the flow-on impacts that go to regional South Australia is pretty clear. And that means that when people are looking to have surgeries, etc., often they're being postponed, and it means that people from the country just can't get those basic needs. We know that how our system operates, and that is that you can deal with the basics in the country, but when you have some accelerated issues that you need sorted out, you have to go to the city. And that is certainly a concern that we're seeing, not just here in the Barossa Valley, but right across regional South Australia.
And I'm speaking of the Barossa Valley. I was at a function last night and someone was telling me they were visiting the region and they sprained their ankle and they were shocked to find there was no hospital they could go to for the particular treatment they needed. They needed to head into the suburbs. That's a story you hear all over regional South Australia.
Yeah, very, very much so. And look, I think across regional South Australia, we are seeing a bit of a depletion in the services that are available. And Penny Pratt, who's our Shadow Minister for Regional Health, and certainly from my perspective as a very proud country MP, we certainly have a focus on doing what we can to bring some more services back to the region. We've been speaking about the Barossa Hospital for a long time, Ricky, and I think that these are some of the things that we need to see elevated in regional communities.
Now, let's talk about this ramping situation in Adelaide. I'll get to code whites in a moment, but what did Labor actually pledge when they came into office? And this was one of their totemic issues in terms of fixing the ramping situation.
I just cannot believe what a desperate attempt we've seen from the government to rewrite history on this one, because it was unequivocal. They promised to fix ramping. And many of your listeners at home would know, Ricky, what ramping is. And ramping is when ambulances are stuck on the ramp outside of the emergency department. And I find it a little bit cute that at the same time where the government has governed over the worst 10 months of ramping in South Australia's history, worse than ever before, in fact it's doubled since the state election, that they're now trying to desperately shift the goalposts and saying, no, we never promised to do that. We actually said that we would fix response times. Now, there is no denying that these two things are inextricably linked, but I think that to try and pull the wool over South Australians and try and hoodwink them into rewriting history is pretty concerning. But as an opposition, we'll be holding them to account. But ultimately, I think that every single voter knows exactly what they voted for, and that was a plan to fix ramping.
Has there been a bit of hoodwinking when it comes to maybe hiding ambulances? We're seeing this footage from Flinders Medical Centre of parking them up in the car park somewhere so they're not seen outside the front of the hospital.
Well, exactly, and this is just another symbol of how bad ramping is in metropolitan Adelaide. At Flinders Hospital, we are now at a situation where ramping is so bad that we've got ambulances and patients and paramedics that are quite literally overflowing and oozing from the hospital ramp out into the hospital car park. Now, the hospital car park at Flinders, it was there to be able to help ambulances restock once they've actually offloaded the patient, if you like. But it's now becoming a common practice for them to actually be ramping up on level 4. That's how bad ramping is. So we've called on the government to explain the situation, to say who actually made the decision to allow this to occur, and importantly, when are they going to put an end to it? Because it is not good enough that patients who are being brought to the emergency department are now waiting in the car park.
And now when it comes to this code white debate, hospitals have various codes for incidents happening in the hospital. What does a code white mean, and how does that feed into this availability of emergency department beds?
So there's been 3 separate occasions just in the last week, Ricky, where we've had every single metropolitan hospital on code white. And what that means is that there are no beds available in emergency departments anywhere in metropolitan Adelaide, not a single bed. And so that highlights the extraordinary pressure that our health system is operating under. I actually had the privilege of going to Flinders Medical Centre on Monday, where I spoke to so many of the hard-working frontline health workers, and you can feel and see the sheer concern and exhaustion that they've got and the conditions that they're operating in. And so that's why we need the government to put the pedal to the metal when it comes to delivering what they promised. They promised more beds, more ambos, more ambulances, and they said that all of this was a part of their plan to fix ramping, but it just doesn't make any sense that if they had the plan, why is it going backwards? And why is our system under so much pressure that they've never seen before?
Now, you mentioned some of the stress this causes within the hospitals. What about for the patients and their families? What are some of the stories we're hearing about those waiting in an ambulance to get into a hospital?
Well, we've seen some pretty, or heard some pretty concerning situations, and it was reported yesterday that in relation to an ambulance that was actually parked in the car park at Flinders, that there was someone having a medical, they were being examined basically in the car park. So you can imagine the concern that would bring to a family. I mean, I certainly know that if it was one of my loved ones that was being looked at in the hospital car park when you expect them to be treated in a hospital, I mean, that's pretty alarming stuff, particularly when they voted for and when South Australians voted in a government who promised to fix this. And then you look at, this is a major issue, Ricky, but you look at some of the smaller things in our health system. Just, for instance, getting a pillow in our metropolitan hospital seems to be a challenge. It's like finding a needle in a haystack at the moment. So we forced the government into launching an audit because after hearing story after story about people who were coming to emergency departments unable to get a pillow, the government said nothing to see here, but now they've been forced into an audit. So it's not just the big issues that the government are struggling with at the moment, it's the little things as well. And I think this just points to a Premier and a government that have completely changed their priorities post-election, and that is always alarming for South Australians when they voted for something and they're not getting it post-election.
Well, Ashton Hurn is your Shadow Health Minister in South Australia. We're out of time, but thank you so much for just helping us work our way through the mess there in metropolitan Adelaide.
Thanks, Ricky. Thanks for your time.